Hi, and welcome to Faculty Focus, a podcast supporting the clinical education community in Leicester. We bring you Educator CPD, showcase new initiatives, and shine a light on some of the faculty behind it all. Hussein and I spent a few days up in Glasgow at the AMEE 2023 conference. In this episode, we discuss some of the themes and sessions we attended and consider what lessons and ideas we can bring back to Leicester.
Right, that's it. End of AMEE 2023, Glasgow. What a few days it's been. Hussein, have you found it? Your first one, actually.
My first in-person one. I was really looking forward to this before coming, and it's lived up to expectation. I wasn't expecting it to be so big. I attended one that was during COVID, the virtual one. Obviously, you don't get a sense of just how many delegates there will be, and the worldwide interest in it. I was struck by how many people there are from different countries and the languages that you hear, and the insights they bring. So, yeah, it's been great.
Overall positive.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just not often you get sort of a decent amount of time to actually think. I think I've really enjoyed the opportunity to think and discuss ideas in a bit more depth, because it feels like you're just too busy when you're in the clinical world trying to fit all this stuff in. But yeah, I feel like I could have geeked out a bit for a few days on all things education.
And it's that opportunity to think in depth about things. You might give a paper a cursory glance at work, or just specifically, you have a needs assessment and you quickly find something. But to actually attend workshops and symposia where things are discussed, a topic is discussed in depth, that's something has been a fairly unique experience for me coming to it.
Yeah. I tell you, one of the surprises for me was, so I wasn't going to come to Glasgow.
No.
Because of my preconceptions of Glasgow as a city. But just I guess it's the image you hear about from, I don't know, the 80s, 90s, the concrete jungle and tenement blocks. So that's the kind of thing in my. I mean, I've driven through Glasgow, and it's on the motorway goes through it, and you pass it, and I've never really. But I tell you what, it's a really nice city.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed spending time here. I think we both have, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. I came recently for the first time and had that same preconception, and came in. Yeah, it's beautiful. The architecture's stunning. The space and the things going on. It's been places to eat and things to do. It in itself is a diversity with so much going on, but without that kind of if you go to London, it's a heaving, and you feel like you're tired just walking around. Here, it's quite different.
Yeah,
no, I really enjoyed it.
Although your shoes have been sore.
My shoes are too tight.
Shoes are wrong. You went for fashion over them.
Well, his shoes were too tight. I wasn't expecting to walk around very much. I was expecting to be driven, but
stick that on expensive.
Yeah.
So so I guess coming to the actual conference, huge amount of stuff. I mean, the schedule is massive. Each session has a full 20, 25 different things you could go to. So what we do what are the highlights for you? What sort of things, what sort of themes do you come back to over and over again, do you think?
The themes are, this I think is a big theme it's on a lot of agendas. But diversity, inclusivity, representation was a big message here, and it was really great to actually attend a variety of workshops and symposia about that, and have it looked at from so many different lenses, because I think it really is something that. Well, what I've taken from this is it's really something that you can't solve, you can't even explore easily. It's such a complex domain, particularly in education, and the implications of it, and the lived experiences of so many different people that feed into it. It really is something that demands in-depth, nuanced discussion. For example, just on the first day, I was really struck. Another thing that I've really liked is presentation skills. And we've talked about this before. So I went to the Pecha session, which is the mode of delivery of, you have 20 slides and each slide only lasts 20 seconds.
Right.
And it automatically moves forward. So you're constrained by the time, you're constrained by the number of slides. I really like how that impacts on presentation skills. Within that session, there was someone called Scott Wright, who's a physician in America with cerebral palsy, talking about his journey from secondary education into medical school, his life as a resident, his life as an attending, and it was, I think it's all well and good to hear about diversity and inclusivity as an abstract thing, but to hear the experiences of someone who you would not normally hear from, and to really have those his lived experiences hammered home, and to see the challenges that he has overcome, and the steps that he's made to empower others. So a lot of his research was on role modeling, which is, we've talked about before, and it's something that I'm particularly interested in. So that was pretty inspirational to hear that, and I think that that's what you get from a conference. You have the opportunity to hear those voices that you wouldn't otherwise hear from.
Yeah.
So that was moving.
Yeah.
And then, seeing that from other lenses as well. So, something I think I'd vaguely heard about it, but not in very much detail, was active bystander training.
Oh, right.
So
I've heard of that before.
yeah, the more sessions about that, and it highlighted that it's in the current or previous issue of Medical Teacher, there's 12 tips about active bystander training, and they kind of highlighted that it's ways to empower everyone within an organization to recognize and challenge poor behaviors that have become ingrained into an institution. So to pick up, to understand what constitutes a microaggression, what constitutes unwanted physical touching, and what you can do about that. So that was because that felt like a really tangible thing.
Yeah.
Like a practical way of.
So they'd integrated this into a teaching program then, or is that
This was this presentation was about developing a pilot for active bystander training, and developing an initial validation of an evaluation tool for it.
okay? Right. Early stages.
So it was, I think, the University, maybe of Glasgow, maybe of Dundee, implementing that and developing a tool to validate it.
Oh, because that sounds a bit like reverse mentoring, or at least similar sort of stuff covered. It sounds like someone pointing things out in real time.
Yeah, and that's it. I think one of those kind of take-home messages is how these all fall. How could these fall under one umbrella? Because all these things are kind of different lenses of how do you identify, challenge, normalized attitudes and behaviors that discriminate against different members within that organization, be them minority or not minority. So it's fascinating to hear about that, and to see how that was been implemented. This was at undergraduate level, and the development of a tool to actually evaluate this kind of this kind of tool.
That's interesting because I think at the conference feels like there's a mix of the practical bits of how to teach, examples of how people have done the actual operational bits, but they are all, there's also an exploration of the much more deeper issues, to even sort of going into philosophy, isn't it? Your philosophy of how things are the way they are, and your approach, your kind of attitude to some of these, or the way things are at the moment, really does influence, people's experiences. But it's not enough just to question how you deliver it. It's actually the whole theoretical basis.
Yeah,
you deliver that. So
yeah, exactly.
it's quite deep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's something that you may not necessarily pick up from, even from formal postgraduate study in medical education. These kinds of things might get touched upon, but how that impacts someone's educational journey when things like that are going on.
Maybe we should do a podcast on it. Just sort of explore it. But give it a bit of time, properly explore it a bit. I think you'll be exploring it mostly.
Yeah,
And I'll be there as a naive sort of an ignorant participant. But that would be really let's put that one in there in the notes. I think for me there were lots of things. I think in terms of specific things that I went to, I really, the first session I went to was a journal club for simulation, and there were 4 papers presented there, and it was a really interesting one there about, there's a lot of talk about speaking up in clinical practice, and we always seem to come at it from the person lower in the hierarchy, like what can they do to speak up, and that. This was a simulation paper discussing how they turned it on its head and said, well, what is it the seniors can do to make themselves more approachable? And they did some simulations and pulled out some themes from the feedback. And so that's given me some ideas of how to, maybe integrate that into when we have incident investigations. If there's an element of someone not speaking up, perhaps there's some things there that we could put into the recommendations that help people to speak up, because it's not just empowering person to speak up and fostering an environment that allows that to happen. And that very much in medicine, I feel that is, that's the job of the senior person in the room. So as a consultant, that definitely got me thinking of my theatre environment and things I can do there. I went to some, I think I felt validated a bit. I went to some faculty development stuff. There were other faculty development coordinators, tutors, depending which part of the world you're in. And it felt like everyone's struggling with the same thing.
Yeah.
So a little bit like what we're doing in the podcast is trying to bring a community of people together within the locality of UHL, University of Leicester, and sharing knowledge, know-how, being able to have discussions. So it's not easy because it feels like it's more set up in the US, sort of North America, Canada, but it doesn't feel like we've quite got to that point yet in the UK. But that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, I get it's that. I think this came back time and time again in our discussions as well of how does the jobbing clinician interpret and apply these methods, particularly with a conference like AMEE. It's such a research heavy,
Feels it at times as well.
and so things like that, faculty development, it's like there's all these theories, things that I've heard of for the first time here. Another one that was really interesting is intercultural competence and models about that, but by a guy called Deerdoff. But similar to the faculty development, how you bring that to a busy organization that has clinical pressures where it's staff members maybe and are passionate about doing these things, but how do you bring them together? How do you create a community of practice in an environment where there are so many other pressures?
I think that interesting you say that, because I think that feeds into a session that I went to, a BME session, the Best Evidence of Medical Education session I went to, which you've got researchers, people in quite senior positions in education research, producing best evidence guidance, but is that guidance filtering down to your jobbing clinical teacher on the shop floor? And whilst you may say this is a more effective way to teach, and that's certainly something I've experienced in the past, if people can't see that it makes a big difference, because it takes a lot of effort to change up the way you do things. If teaching is good enough, then, are we really going to be making the sorts of changes that high up are being touted as the way things should be done? I think people in those positions can definitely change curricula and program assessment, but on the shop floor teaching, bedside teaching level, I'm not sure that filters through, and understandably, because it feels too far removed.
Yeah. And there's that disconnect between there's such a gap between the academic research aspect of medical education and the shop floor, because interpreting some of these studies and interpreting some of the critically analyzing some of these studies is hard work.
Yes, of course. You were on a AMEE, aren't you? So yeah.
And how that translates to teaching on a ward round, or clinical exposure for early years medical students, or programs of assessment is tough.
Yeah,
especially when you're working in hospitals or universities where instigating change isn't easy.
Yeah, 100%. It's well, there's so much you could talk. I've got pages of notes, so we could probably be here for several hours. But I think the last thing I would say, one of the things, it sort of ties into my an overall thought for the conference. There was a session I went to on. There's been a lot about gamification, in the last few years, and escape rooms. So I was quite interested in trying to find out what's the evidence for it. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe there's not been enough time to generate that evidence, but at least a kind of a debate or a justification for that as an approach, because on the surface that was something I'm skeptical about. And actually, the last session that I went to, there were the beginnings of that starting to come through. There's a Professor Round who is at St George's Medical School in London, and he sort of outlines basically what I was looking for is how are you anchoring this in a theoretical framework? What elements can we teach? What elements shouldn't we be teaching in an escape room, for example? And actually a really important point was moving beyond learner experience, because with all of these games, the learners love it. You can't question the motivation. It's clearly probably the most motivating form of learning, but you've got to temper that with, is there actually meaningful learning that translates into a clinical context? And I was quite encouraged that view came across, because it did feel up until, the last couple of days, it has felt that, overall, maybe there hasn't been that level of challenge in some of the sessions. It felt like the focus is more on the positive.
Yeah.
So we did this and it was really positive. And I think what really, in any field, you need to be able to justify it and, challenge a view from from lots of different angles to see whether it still stands true. And I felt like that maybe was maybe missing a bit from the conference.
I think it's a really important aspect of rigor in research and just inquiry in any context. And so often the comparison was made between medical education research and clinical research, where the people kept saying, in clinical research, you give a dose of a certain drug, you measure the response, you get p-values, and the conclusions are concrete. And you can't really give a dose of education. But there's challenges in clinical research as well, and it's really important to highlight the negatives, not to try and dismantle the argument, but to strengthen the argument.
Yeah, 100%.
So conversations around diversity, inclusivity, as with gamification, I think it's really important to understand why it works. And part of that discussion has to have some element of challenge.
Yeah.
And one of the points that was really eloquently made is that you almost never find studies that say we tried something, it failed miserably, and here's why we think it failed miserably. Because that would be such a powerful learning resource for the whole community to say, well, actually, for example, we tried gamification in this context. We thought it would work because of X, Y, Z reasons. We tested it and no one learned a thing.
Yeah.
But the learners were really happy.
That's useful in itself.
Exactly. And there were other sessions I told about the structure of academic research is potentially it's changing, but the pressure to submit and publish and get papers is such a massive driving force, and links into the need for overwhelmingly positive messages to be spread. And I think that as you said, maybe threatens the depth of inquiry.
I'd certainly align with that thought. Any other sort of overall sort of thoughts then for the conference as a whole? Any food was pretty good.
Food was great. Well, it was pretty good. There's that beef thing that didn't sit well with me.
What was the block of?
Yeah, the block of,
was it thing red or a potato
thing?
Very strange.
It looked like a sponge.
I should find it out.
And taste like a sponge.
Very strange one.
But we're very grateful for the experience.
No, indeed. So yeah, we're hoping to bring some of these little nuggets back to our listeners back in Leicester. I think in the show notes we'll try and find the references for some of the stuff that we've been talking about, and we'll stick it in the show notes so that you, those listeners who are interested, can follow up on some of those papers, ideas, and I think probably on the journey back, I suspect we'll be thinking of ideas we can bring back and actually start implementing. I mean, I think we were talking the other evening, I think we've got a load of ideas for our fellows program, for the education fellows. I think there's some really interesting ideas about some of the concepts that I think if you're an education fellow, it's useful to leave your 12-month post with an idea of some of the discussions around bigger topics. So, and you're going to do a fringe next. Next AMEE, is that right?
I think that's set in stone. The fringe stuff. I think I'll do I was thinking about this more.
And we should probably explain to the listeners what a fringe event is.
I needed it explaining to me.
I think you've been slightly traumatized by the fringe. The fringe is an alternative session. There's usually 2 sessions at an AMEE conference on the main day 1 and 2, and it's really out there. It kind of loosely related to education. Feel like it's an outlet for a lot of artistic talent that is within our community. But tell us.
Well, there was it was great. There was a spoken word piece. There was a something exploring art in medicine. There was, I think you'd call it stand-up comedy.
Oh God.
And a musical.
Hey. Well, there you go. I mean, as a musician yourself.
Well, exactly. I spent most of this while thinking about it. I think I want to do a non-verbal Pecha Kucha.
That would be interesting.
So have the Pecha Kucha going. I've said it on this now, so I hope I'm not 100% committed by saying this, because it may not work. But a Pecha Kucha, 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, with no talking, but with music instead. And I'd play some instruments with the aim of actually getting something meaningful across, not just like or playing with drums for a few minutes, like actually conveying a message about a project that we've undertaken or something.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I think you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Watch this space. Abstracts are usually around February time, so maybe we'll do a pod in. Make sure we include that in a pod in February to see where you're up to on that.
Yeah.
On that idea. But no, overall, I think a really good few days. I feel like my brain is fizzing, so I feel like I've got a good dose of CPD, and hopefully something that makes, changes the way that we do teaching and that we approach teaching at UHL and University of Leicester. So great. Thank you very much. We've got to go and catch a flight now.
So yeah, hopefully something cancelled.
Hopefully the air traffic control systems bug in the last few days has been fixed. So good. All right. I'll see you back in Leicester. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Faculty Focus podcast. If you like the episode, please share with friends and colleagues. You can also like and subscribe to the show and perhaps even leave a review. Clinical education can be tough, but we're stronger as a community, so if you have an idea for an episode or would like to come on and talk to us, do get in touch via email or Twitter. Details in the show notes. The Faculty Focus Podcast, Community Development Showcase.